Around mid-March 2025, a classified document from the Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI) was unexpectedly leaked onto a darknet forum specializing in underground finance. The 37-page document, encrypted at Level 3 and labeled Restricted Internal Review, only carried a short yet weighty title: Operation Howler, Phase 2, Domestic Infiltration. What shocked the public was not merely the information regarding intercontinental trafficking routes for exotic animals, something already familiar in the FBI's investigation files, but rather the unexpected appearance of a well-known name, Cesar Felipe Millan Favela. He is globally recognized as the Dog Whisperer, a figure celebrated for rescuing abandoned dogs and retraining their natural pack instincts. No one could have imagined that a man once revered by millions of animal lovers would be listed among individuals potentially linked to the illegal transportation and handling of animals. The entire situation was set into motion following a report from a residential neighborhood in Santa Clarita, California, where neighbors complained of a strong foul odor and continuous roaring sounds coming from Cesar Millan's house over 3 consecutive nights. When police officers arrived at the scene and received no response, they had no way of knowing they were about to step into a labyrinth where each discovery would only raise even more horrifying suspicions. So what exactly is happening? Stay tuned for today's video to uncover the answer. 1. Discovery of the secret basement. Based on accounts from involved parties at 3:14 a.m. on March 20th, 2025, a rapid response team from the Los Angeles Police Department (LAPD), accompanied by 2 agents from the FBI's Environmental Crimes Unit, approached the residence located at 11745 Silver Maple Road, Santa Clarita, the home of Cesar Millan. Despite following protocol by knocking 3 times and calling twice without receiving any response while Millan's black Range Rover SUV remained parked in the garage, the team decided to request an emergency breach warrant. There were no signs of forced entry or burglary at the house. Yet, it was eerily quiet. There were no barking dogs, nor did the doorbell chime. What puzzled the investigators was a pungent, musty smell, an odd mixture of damp fur and rusty metal that filled the ground floor, even though all the windows were tightly closed. The central air conditioning system was still operating, ruling out the possibility of a long, decomposed body. However, that scent, described as the smell of life intertwined with decay, could not be dismissed lightly. After inspecting the main living areas and finding nothing unusual except that the house appeared uninhabited for several days, Special Agent Claire Donovan noticed a small scratch mark just beneath a bookshelf in the study. She knelt down, used a UV flashlight, and discovered a light layer of dust with a clearly defined small handprint, suggesting that the bookshelf had been moved and then pushed back into place. The team immediately removed the bookshelf. Behind it, they found a false wall made of plywood, concealing a narrow steel door secured with an old-style mechanical code lock. After about 30 minutes of lock breaching, the task force managed to open the door and descended into a basement that was not listed in the original blueprints when Cesar Millan purchased the house in 2015. The space below had a low ceiling, and the air was dense and noticeably colder than the upper floors. Under the beams of their flashlights, sweeping every corner, the first thing that caught their eyes were steel cages. These cages were not entirely empty. Some contained bundles of animal fur that appeared to have undergone preliminary cleaning but had not been fully processed. One bundle bore a handwritten label in marker, Vulpes lagopus, Q424, the scientific name for the Arctic fox. Nearby, another bundle of thick gray fur was labeled Canis lupus arctos, inbound. Some bundles still had traces of dried blood, and in a few cages lined with straw, there were even detached claws. No live animals were found, but the strong stench indicated that the remnants were relatively fresh. Further down the narrow hallway, Special Agent Jonas Mertz discovered a large bulletin board covered with parchment paper maps and red strings, the kind typically used by investigators to connect evidence in criminal cases. On the board was a world map with red circles marking locations like Manaus, Brazil, Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, Nairobi, Kenya, and Hanoi, Vietnam. These points were linked by red strings leading back to a central hub located in San Diego, the former site of the Dog Psychology Center. Another notable detail: each marked location was accompanied by a strange code. For example, X24A-NCGL. Preliminary analysis led the FBI to suspect these were internal shipping codes belonging to an international exotic animal smuggling network, as similar codes had surfaced during a crackdown on wildlife trafficking in Romania in 2019. In the opposite corner, a 5-drawer steel cabinet was secured with a biometric lock. The team had to dismantle the hinges to access its contents. Inside, they found a trove of documents, copies of passports, live animal transport permits, international freight contracts, and wire transfer receipts totaling tens of thousands of dollars, most of them labeled under a company that did not appear in any commercial registry. Canis Global Trading Inc., with a listed address in Odessa, Ukraine. An old fax was attached with a handwritten note. Ship before the 15th. Use the old route. No more via Panama. This information was immediately transmitted back to the Central Data Unit for cross-referencing with previous busts tied to the Panama-Mexico-California smuggling corridor. Particularly striking was an old desktop computer offline and containing several encrypted files. Initial checks revealed a folder named Temp Pack Leader, storing numerous photographs of wild animals domesticated in urban settings, photos seemingly taken at clandestine training facilities. One picture showed a white wolf wearing a GPS tracking collar standing next to Cesar Millan in what looked like a film studio setting. All images were time-stamped, spanning from 2012 to 2023. Although no animal carcasses or explicit evidence of abuse were found in the basement, every trace at the scene pointed to the existence of a sophisticated and complex network hidden under the facade of a dog training center. And what haunted the agents most near the basement's emergency exit? Special Agent Claire Donovan found a small piece of paper taped to the wall bearing a handwritten message in black ink. The pack only follows the strongest, even in silence. According to later confirmation by the FBI, this very phrase had once appeared in Cesar Millan's personal diary, which went missing after his divorce in 2011. 2. The strange documents. Based on leaked reports, an investigative memo stated, "On March 21, 2025, just 24 hours after the discovery of a secret basement at Cesar Millan's private residence, all seized documents were transferred to the FBI's International Substances Division, ISD. According to report, ISD 25A-021, at least 37 documents contained content incompatible with Cesar Millan's current business operations. Notably, many of these documents were not directly under his name, but were associated with unidentified individuals or shell companies, all of which traced back to Millan's home address or his former training center in San Diego. One of the initial documents that drew attention was a special pet transport license issued by the Texas State Veterinary Authority, registered to a Mexican national named Luis Fernando N., residing in Oaxaca. However, the destination listed for the animals, which included 3 rare unidentified breed dogs, 1 semi-domesticated wildcat, and 2 newborn hyenas, was Cesar Millan's private residence in Santa Clarita. The signature on the document belonged to a veterinarian whose license had been revoked in 2020 due to involvement in a scandal concerning the injection of growth hormones into competition dogs in Brazil. The stamp on the document was faint and misaligned, but still legible, reading TX Specie 2024, suggesting it was a counterfeit stamp designed to appear official. This led to the next discovery, a 4-page English-typed contract titled Internal Transit Agreement, Classified, Non-Disclosure Compound. The contract bore the logo of an undisclosed company, Fauna Nexus Ltd., with a fabricated company registration number from Cyprus. According to Interpol, Fauna Nexus is among 5 entities suspected of involvement in illegal rare animal transactions, under the guise of genetic research projects. Clause 6 of the contract, highlighted in red, stated, Subject must be isolated for behavioral observation for no less than 72 hours. All preconditioning must occur off-grid. No traceable prints, physical or digital. Among the document sets, the FBI discovered a faded Polaroid photograph taken around the mid-2000s. In the photo, Cesar Millan, smiling brightly, stands beside three unidentified men in dark suits. The picture was taken in the backyard of a villa next to a glass-enclosed iron cage housing a creature resembling a wolf-dog hybrid, its eyes emitting an unusual glow due to lighting effects or perhaps something else. On the back of the photo was written, "Trial 7 complete. Hybrid shows pack response." When examining the financial section, matters became more alarming. In a set of international invoices sent via DHL, there were at least 5 wire transfers ranging from $11,000 to $39,500, all originating from an organization based in Shenzhen, China, named Eastern Wild Resources Development Co., Ltd. The payment descriptions included ambiguous terms such as partial pelt canine behavior, docu-set 4, and conditioning protocol, custom. From the invoices and accompanying notes, the analysis team suspected that Eastern Wild Resources was a front company specializing in the procurement of wild animal pelts from Latin America. One attached contract contained a particularly suspicious detail. Client requests, no blood marks. Full pelt, integrity, natural death preferred if possible. However, the deepest layer of this document labyrinth was not financial. It was the system of behavioral notes and animal psychological diagrams, handwritten and clearly numbered. Session 13B, Test on Wolven. 3. Submissive phase, reward, response matrix. High cortisol, tolerance confirmed. Some notes indicated an intent not merely to train animals, but to reprogram their wild instincts, transforming them into tools within a human interactive ecosystem. One sheet even featured a hand-drawn diagram of a dog's brain annotating areas labeled fear, suppression, obedience, override, alpha mimicry module, and at the bottom signed in pencil CM. In a short audio recording retrieved from an external hard drive, Cesar is heard speaking in Spanish, his tone calm as if conducting a training session. Everything is about energy, but if energy can be reset, we can create a species that knows only submission without fear. The recording lasted only 14 seconds, but for FBI analysts, it was sufficient to conclude this was not merely behavioral training. It was an applied psychological experiment on wild animals. In a special fax sent from an office in Bucharest, Romania, the signatory, Alexei Mikhailov, a figure classified by Interpol as a Level 3 biohazard risk, wrote, "If Millan's results are reproducible, we can eliminate the breeder layer entirely. No more learning curves. Just pure instinct bent to utility." This document was never officially released, but according to an agent involved in the case, we no longer view Cesar Millan as an outsider. With what was found in the basement and in the documents, he could be the central link, or worse, the behavioral architect of a global-scale program. The connection was established. The basement was not merely a strange storage room. It was a coordination hub laboratory and underground satellite headquarters for a clandestine operational network. The documents could not have been fabricated arbitrarily. All bore signatures, evidence of fund transfers and specialized language in animal behavioral science that only someone like Cesar Millan could comprehend and author. 3. Revisiting the past. Overlooked warning signs. With physical evidence collected from the basement and documents linked to an international underground organization, the investigative team was compelled to revisit a fundamental question. Had Cesar Millan exhibited warning signs in the past, signs that no one was sufficiently suspicious to notice? Analysts at the FBI conducted a comprehensive review of Cesar's media journey personal biography and travel history starting from 2003, the year he first appeared on television through the show Dog Whisperer. A picture filled with inconsistencies began to emerge. From the onset of his fame, Cesar faced criticism from numerous animal behavior experts for his training methods, which were deemed coercive and controlling rather than empathetic. He frequently employed techniques such as alpha rolls, neck pinches, and even mild electric shocks to compel dogs into submission. In several episodes, viewers witnessed dogs screaming, trembling, and turning away from him, yet Cesar explained these reactions as part of an energy recalibration process. One video removed from online platforms in 2009, titled "Breaking the Alpha," depicted him confronting a Malinois dog described as uncontrollable. After 23 minutes, the dog collapsed. Its eyes glazed over, and Cesar declared, "It understands who the leader is." Subsequent analyses by experts suggested the animal might have entered a state of learned helplessness, a typical response in creatures subjected to prolonged abuse. At the time, no one questioned why would a dog lover require such absolute control. In 2016, during an episode of Cesar 911, he was invited to assist a family dealing with aggressive behavior from a dog named Simon. During the training session, Cesar led Simon past a pig pen. Within less than 10 seconds, the dog leaped over the fence and killed a piglet despite the homeowner's screams. Although Cesar issued an apology and attributed the incident to uncontrolled instincts, a subsequent investigation uncovered a suspicious detail. The pig pen lacked a protective cover, a peculiar omission for a program produced by National Geographic. An internal source, an anonymous lighting technician, revealed that the scene wasn't accidental. Cesar requested 2 retakes because the reactions weren't intense enough. A new hypothesis from the FBI proposed that the incident might have been a behavioral test to assess control over aggressive animals targeting weaker prey, aiming to evaluate Cesar's ability to reprogram the instincts of wild creatures. Utilizing a weaker animal, the pig, to trigger reflexive behavior in a stronger one. The dog is a technique documented in animal combat training models in Eastern Europe. Following the death of Daddy, the pack assistant and symbol of the show, and his divorce from Cesar Millan, Cesar virtually disappeared from the media during the last 3 months of 2010. Upon his return, he announced that he had overcome severe depression and had contemplated suicide. However, passport data from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security indicated that during that period, he traveled abroad 3 times to Ukraine, Malaysia, and Iceland, citing lectures on animal behavior as the purpose. Yet there was no evidence of any public events, press coverage, or conferences featuring Cesar Millan in these countries at that time. Notably, Iceland, with its cold terrain and isolated conditions, has been a site for certain animal research organizations to test genes for cold resistance. Ukraine, particularly, Odessa, is known as a clandestine hub for fur trafficking to Asia. Malaysia has long been accused of being a transit point for rare animals, part of the Mekong-Kalimantan-Sumatra Black Triangle Corridor. The FBI is currently collaborating with international security agencies to verify his activities during that time. A senior agent disclosed, "We believe those 3 months were a trigger period when Cesar Millan not only overcame personal crises, but also embarked on a new role within an organization redefining wild animals." Cesar is often praised for his ability to communicate through energy with dogs. He rarely speaks, instead using eye contact gestures and even breath to dominate a pack of aggressive dogs. However, according to behavioral psychologists at the FBI, this might be a form of alpha imprinting, a technique employing nonverbal cues to embed submissive instincts into an animal's subconscious. Strangely, he seldom allows others to train in his stead. Even his son Andre, despite appearing in recent programs, remains in a supporting role, never taking the lead. Cesar doesn't believe anyone can lead the pack like he does, a former associate stated. Is this indicative of a controlling mindset, or a form of alpha model transfer where Cesar perceives himself not merely as a trainer, but as a behavioral neural template? When connecting these seemingly disparate details, investigators are confronting a new model. Cesar Millan may have devoted much of his career not to rescuing lost dogs, but to experimenting, modifying, and training them under an unnatural behavioral conditioning system, serving a greater purpose, a form of absolutely obedient animal legion. A question now becomes unavoidable. The animals he successfully trained, were they truly rehabilitated individuals, or have they become new artificial versions molded by a template someone is establishing from the shadows? 4. Reactions from family and friends. When the first details about the secret investigation at Cesar Millan's private residence leaked, the media buzzed as if a global scandal was about to erupt. However, it wasn't Cesar himself, but those closest to him. His fiancée, son, close friends, and former colleagues who became the first pieces of the puzzle to surface. Their reactions, instead of uniting to protect Cesar's image, were a series of tangled, contradictory, and even opposing behaviors, further convincing investigators that Cesar Millan was not acting alone. Jahira Dar, his longtime fiancée, was the first to speak out when international media swarmed around the incident. In a brief yet emotional interview with Animal Planet Review, she succinctly stated, "I don't know anything about what's being mentioned. Cesar loves animals more than anyone I've ever met. That house is filled with nothing but love and peace." However, her statement was quickly overshadowed by digital forensic evidence. On Jahira's phone confiscated at LAX airport as she prepared to fly to Bucharest. At least 6 encrypted messages were found sent to an unregistered number located in Romania. One of these, when decrypted, contained phrases like, "Drop 4 at secondary," and ensure EBN is scrubbed with EBN believed to stand for Exotic Breed, Network, an anonymous website system specializing in trading rare animals of unclear origin. More seriously, an internal audio recording recovered from the cache drive revealed a steady, low female voice speaking in English. "If everything blows up, don't return to the center. Use the old contact in Varna. They know how to erase traces." Acoustic analysis confirmed the voice matched that of Jahira Dar. While there's insufficient evidence to conclude her complicity, the FBI no longer considers her an outsider. The question arises, is Jahira merely someone psychologically manipulated by Cesar over time, or is she an active participant in the system he leads? Meanwhile, André Millan, Cesar's eldest son, who had appeared alongside his father on television multiple times, seemed confused and firmly denied any wrongdoing. "I trust my father unconditionally," he told CNN reporters when asked. "Perhaps someone is trying to bring him down. My father would never harm animals." But when the FBI searched André's private apartment in Studio City, they discovered a personal computer containing an encrypted folder named Project Inferis. Inside were detailed designs for a website utilizing the dark web platform with an anonymous interface titled Exotic Breed Network for applied instinctual breeding. The system's data described at least 12 animal species that had undergone behavioral adjustments, including statistical indices on reaction capabilities, obedience, time, neurological stability, and even genetic experiments. Each entry was coded and linked to an IP address within the Tor network. More importantly, a series of images from the 2022 Rare Animal Exhibition in Varna, Bulgaria, confirmed that André had a private meeting with Alexei Mikhailov listed on Interpol's Red Notice for suspected inhumane animal experiments. In the photos, André is seen shaking hands with Mikhailov in front of a glass-encased white wolf model beneath a chilling slogan, "Symbiotic Obedience. Nature reinvented clearly." André is not just a media victim. He knows something perhaps even poised to inherit the training model that Cesar initiated years ago. Another figure drawing attention during the investigation is Joe Rodriguez, a longtime friend and colleague of Cesar at the Dog Psychology Center. Rodriguez withdrew from the center in 2018, citing occupational injury. Since then, he has virtually disappeared from the media. However, customs records indicate that over the past 3 years, Rodriguez has made at least 12 trips to countries like Kazakhstan, Kenya, Suriname, and Ukraine, all hotspots for rare animal trade. Notably, at the 2020 Dubai Exotic Pet Convention, A widely circulated photo shows him standing next to booth CX-47, matching the internal code for Canis Global Trading, an animal smuggling organization currently under FBI investigation. When questioned, Rodriguez denied any involvement, asserting he was just an attendee. However, an email from his personal address sent to an encrypted mailbox linked to Cesar in 2019 read, "We've gone too far to turn back. Every species can adapt, except humans themselves." While the exact meaning of this message remains unconfirmed, the FBI assesses that Rodriguez understands the essence of the plan, possibly being among the first to collaborate with Cesar in conducting behavioral experiments on wild animals. The final individual receiving special attention from the FBI is Victoria Stilwell, a British dog trainer renowned for the show It's Me or the Dog. For years, Stilwell was the sole critical voice within the professional community against Cesar's authoritarian and punitive training methods. In 2010, she publicly declared, "He doesn't train dogs. He conditions fear and calls it discipline." After Cesar's case came to light, Victoria was interviewed privately by the FBI. A leaked transcript records her saying, "Cesar always believed he could touch the primal part in every creature. Initially, I thought it was pure passion. But once at a private seminar, he spoke about the concept of a super PAC individuals who don't need to learn only to receive commands. At the time, I thought he was joking." To date, Victoria Stilwell has vanished from all public platforms, including her once active personal page. An anonymous FBI source revealed she is currently under a special witness protection program. Deep within the FBI's behavioral analysis system, a schematic diagram has been established. Cesar sits at the center, surrounded by numerous connections: Jahira Dar, Andre Millan, Joe Rodriguez, and international partners like Mikhailov. Each holds a piece of the puzzle. None possesses the whole. Even Cesar himself may no longer control the entire network he initiated. Investigators conclude that this is no longer a story about an individual, but about a stratified model where each link is trained and manipulated to believe they are part of something good. Yet when the pieces come together, the truth is they have collectively built a system of breeding, conditioning, and operating animal individuals beyond control. And Cesar Millan is the originating nucleus. Public opinion is beginning to polarize. A segment loyal to the whisperer image refuses to believe the truth. But for the FBI and international agencies, the question now is no longer whether Cesar is involved, but how far this system has developed, how deep it has gone, and who among those who once held his hand, once stood before the camera with him, is continuing this plan in the shadows. 5 FBI's argument. Based on the evidence gathered throughout the investigation, including the secret basement area documents related to international organizations, financial records, and unusual reactions from relatives and associates, the federal investigative team was compelled to construct a comprehensive model to clarify Cesar Millan's true role within a system they internally codenamed Cagebreed. Terrate. Internal reports within the FBI's secure system listed over 37 decisive factors directly linked to a network engaged in illegal trading, breeding, and experimentation on animals spanning at least 4 continents. Financial relationships, movements, and interactions through anonymous platforms no longer appeared personal or coincidental, but had become clear indicators of an organized criminal system that had been operating for years under the guise of behavioral research. A classified report dated March 23, 2025, released by the Joint Task Force of the FBI and Interpol, presented 3 main perspectives regarding Cesar Millan's role in the case. The first hypothesis posits that he is the behavior architect, the individual who developed the model for neurological and behavioral control of animals, serving purposes of commercialization and potentially aiming at the development of biological weapons. This is considered the most severe scenario wherein Cesar is not merely an accomplice, but the actual designer of the model. The basis for this assumption is a system of notes discovered in the basement containing specialized terminology related to reflex inhibition, simulation of the fight or flight response, and analysis of cortisol hormone charts over training timelines. According to a senior behavioral expert from the National Intelligence Analysis Institute, NIAS, these notes are not merely academic. They indicate that the author had the capability to conduct direct experiments, something unlikely, if Cesar were merely a television skills performer. The second, more cautious assumption suggests that Cesar held a central role in the system, but did not have full control. From this perspective, he was recruited by individuals or international organizations such as Canis Global Trading or Fauna Nexus, aiming to leverage his reputation, expertise, and influence to legitimize the importation, transportation, and breeding of wild animal species. In the analysis diagram of the International Animal Smuggling Network, constructed by the FBI, Cesar's villa in Santa Clarita was identified as one of 3 main transit stations, alongside a farm in Arizona and an anonymous animal training center in Romania. The fact that transportation documents bore other names but were sent to his home address is indicative of the use of puppet identities, a technique commonly seen in money laundering, drug trafficking, and recently emerging in applied biological networks. According to financial flow analyses in the past 5 years alone, at least $1 million was transferred under the guise of training sponsorship. But the exact purpose of these funds could not be determined.
This further increases the likelihood that Cesar, though not the founder of the entire network, played a role as the central figure for receiving, processing, and even experimenting on special individuals. The third hypothesis, though less compelling but still retained for comparison, is the possibility that Cesar Millan was entirely a victim being exploited. According to this view, underground organizations took advantage of his credibility, relationships, and facilities to carry out illegal activities without his knowledge. Some arguments presented include the basement was intricately designed but lacked modern surveillance systems. Many important documents did not bear his signature, and no video or audio recordings were found showing him directly participating in the abuse or transportation of animals. However, the persuasiveness of this assumption has been diminishing as a series of Cesar's personal belongings were discovered within the restricted access area of the basement, including a notebook with entries in Spanish. The final line reading, "Tres líneas, tres generaciones. Nadie puede detener lo que ya está despierto." 3 bloodlines, 3 generations. No one can stop what has already been awakened. The FBI also raised concerns about Cesar's unusual disappearance immediately after the incident was uncovered. Although no arrest warrant had been issued, he left his residence within 24 hours after the search concluded and has since not appeared publicly or spoken on any media platforms. An internal source revealed signs indicating he had departed for Mexico via an unofficial route commonly used by animal trafficking organizations to transport creatures through the Sonora region. Additionally, rumors have surfaced that Cesar has sought biological asylum in a Middle Eastern country that does not have an extradition agreement with the United States. A notable point in the FBI's documents is the tri-tier control framework, an organizational structure divided into 3 operational layers, analyzed as follows. First tier, image attraction, utilizing globally influential celebrities to create a legitimate facade. Cesar Millan is considered a suitable figure for this role. Second tier, professional operations, comprising biologists, veterinarians, and behavioral experts operating in the gray area, where the boundaries between science and ethics become blurred. Third tier, high-level coordination, consisting of sponsors, entrepreneurs, and underground financial organizations responsible for controlling finances, locations, and ensuring the entire system remains undisclosed. According to the FBI's assessment, what makes this model particularly dangerous is that the 3 operational tiers lack comprehensive understanding of each other, creating an asymmetric structure that is extremely difficult to dismantle using traditional investigative methods. Within the agency, the FBI has submitted an assessment to the U.S. Congress proposing to classify this case as a non-traditional behavioral biothreat, the first time a criminal model has been identified, not based on the use of high-tech biological weapons, but through the purposeful design of animal behavior to serve human interests. During a closed meeting with representatives from the FBI, CIA, and CDC, a question was raised. If this system were perfected, could it potentially create a form of living weapon? Animals that can completely obey, respond to signals, feel no pain, require no reward, and act solely based on commands, deeply ingrained in their instincts. Does such a thing actually exist? A senior investigator who requested to remain anonymous could not hide his astonishment and exclaimed during the meeting, "We have spent decades researching human conditioning, yet we still face moral barriers. But here, there is an individual or perhaps an entire organization applying exactly what we fear the most, but to creatures that have no voice, and they've succeeded." As international partner organizations were alerted from Europol, Interpol to the biological defense research units in France, Japan, and Israel, a coordinated official search operation was launched. At this point, the target was no longer limited to the name Cesar Millan, but rather the entire underground network in which he could be the central figure. However, just at that moment, the final piece of data was recovered from the auxiliary server system of the exotic breed network, an unreleased video recorded by a wide-angle camera in a closed room. In the footage, Cesar Millan stands facing 3 large animals, 2 wolf hybrid dogs and a hyena, all of which are not restrained or controlled by any devices. He merely gazes into their eyes, saying nothing. Then all 3 animals simultaneously drop to the ground, lying motionless and silent. All the analysis up until this point leads to only one conclusion. Cesar is not just a dog trainer. He has gone beyond understanding animal behavior. He has reached the deepest level where the will of the creature is erased and replaced by a programmed instinct. And if this is true, then this is not just a case, but the beginning of a type of biological technology that has yet to be named. The investigation, code-named Cage Breed, is still ongoing and has not yet come to a conclusion. At the very moment when the mysterious layers are starting to be peeled away, people are forced to pause and ask questions. Not just questions directed at Cesar, but questions directed at the entire system of which he could merely be a link in the chain. The first question, and perhaps the most haunting one, is Cesar Millan the mastermind, or just a pawn set up to conceal something much bigger? Based on all the evidence collected, from the secret basement behavioral notes, financial documents, to the international network of partners, his role seems undeniable. However, the very complexity and sophistication of this system raises another question. Can one individual, no matter how talented, manage a vast network spanning dozens of countries and involving hundreds of individuals for nearly a decade without being detected? Or could it be that Cesar is merely a figurehead, a perfect front for an organization that operates behind the scenes, existing in secrecy, when the whole world believes he is the dog whisperer? Who would have thought that those whispers could actually be orders activating the most primal instincts in creatures? And finally, the most important question still remains unanswered. Will this story truly end here? Or is this merely the beginning of something bigger and darker? Technologies for conditioning instincts, reflex breeding models, the absence of ethical boundaries in animal behavior, research. All of these things are not solely tied to one individual. Similar models have been discovered in Serbia, South Africa, and even at an anonymous research facility in northern Canada. Could it be that Cesar is just a variant? The most obvious example of how science can be misused to such extremes without proper oversight. What lies hidden in that basement, fur transport maps, encrypted files, and shady relationships, has opened a door to a world we never dared to imagine. A world where biological instincts are reprogrammed. A world where animals no longer live by their natural instincts, but by command. Yet the biggest question remains unanswered. Where is Cesar Millan now? And what is being prepared in the shadows as the media begins to forget? What do you think? Is Cesar the true leader, or just a pawn in a covert game played by a hidden organization? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next chapters, where the truth will continue to be revealed layer by layer.